The racial divide in Austin used to look a lot different than it does today. After the Civil War, Austin was seen as sort of a refuge for freed slaves, safe from most of the racial violence that plagued the South. By 1880, the city's African American population lived in pockets spread throughout the city. It was as geographically integrated as Austin has ever been. In 1928, a new city plan was put in place. The Supreme Court had ruled that explicit zoning laws pushing segregation were unconstitutional. So the city leaders got a little creative. If you were an African American and wanted access to public services like schools and parks, you had to live in a so-called Negro district, newly formed on the east side of town. By 1940, you can see how the once dispersed African American population had become concentrated in one area. A few years later, the segregation was cemented. The federal government, in an effort to build wealth following the Depression, began backing mortgage loans. But they wouldn't back these mortgage loans in certain high-risk neighborhoods that were redlined. Minority neighborhoods were virtually always redlined. The effect was that African Americans were left on the outside of what would become one of the largest wealth drivers in U.S. history. Fast forward to now. Austin's population has boomed since the 1970s. The region's development has swept away many of the historically black schools, neighborhoods, and business centers that served as cultural anchors for the community. Rising property values and taxes have forced many African American families to seek more affordable housing in the suburbs. Left with a smaller percentage of black residents in the city, the ties between Austin's African American minority and its Anglo majority have weakened. There are efforts by some in the African American community to rebuild these business and cultural institutions. But reforging the connections requires work from both sides of the racial divide. Without a proactive and concerted effort to reintegrate, Austin will do little more than maintain its divided status quo.